Health authorities in Argentina are currently monitoring a significant surge in rodent populations, a biological phenomenon often referred to as a population eruption, which has historically been linked to an increased risk of hantavirus transmission to human populations. This localized environmental shift, characterized by some as a rodent war or a massive rat boom, centers on the ecological relationship between specific wild rodent species and the viral pathogens they carry. While the headline suggests a global threat, public health reporting focuses on the immediate localized risks in South America, particularly in regions where the virus is endemic. To understand why this development has triggered international interest, it is necessary to examine the nature of hantavirus and the specific conditions in Argentina that lead to such outbreaks. Hantaviruses are a family of viruses spread mainly by rodents, and they can cause varied disease syndromes in people worldwide. In the Americas, these viruses typically manifest as Hantavirus Pulmonary Syndrome, a severe and sometimes fatal respiratory disease. The current situation in Argentina involves the intersection of environmental science and infectious disease surveillance. When rodent populations explode due to favorable weather or food availability, the frequency of human contact with rodent excreta increases. This is not a new phenomenon in the Southern Cone, but the scale of the current rodent activity has prompted a heightened state of alert among provincial health ministries and international observers. The framing of this event as a potential precursor to broader public health challenges stems from the unique characteristics of certain South American hantavirus strains, notably the Andes virus, which has shown rare instances of human-to-human transmission in the past. Consequently, any significant increase in the primary reservoir, the rodents themselves, demands a rigorous and transparent response from the scientific community. The geography of the current concern spans several provinces, where agricultural changes or natural cycles may be fueling the rodent boom. Viewers should understand that while the term pandemic is used in sensationalist contexts, the current scientific focus is on containment, environmental management, and the protection of rural and semi-rural populations who are on the front lines of this ecological shift. This report will detail the mechanisms of this surge, the biological reality of the virus, and the specific steps being taken by medical and environmental agencies to mitigate the risk of a wider outbreak. The operational response to the rodent surge in Argentina involves a multi-tiered approach coordinated by national and provincial health agencies, including the National Institute of Infectious Diseases. Surveillance efforts are currently prioritized in areas reporting the highest density of rodent activity, where field biologists and epidemiologists are trapping specimens to assess the viral load within the population. Lab and testing facilities are on high alert, utilizing polymerase chain reaction, or PCR, testing to confirm cases in patients presenting with early symptoms such as fever, muscle aches, and fatigue. These symptoms often mimic more common illnesses, making the role of specialized diagnostic labs critical in the early stages of an outbreak. In the clinical setting, hospitals in affected regions are reviewing protocols for respiratory support, as Hantavirus Pulmonary Syndrome can progress rapidly to severe distress requiring intensive care and, in some cases, mechanical ventilation. While sensationalist claims suggest a global pandemic is imminent, verified health data currently emphasizes localized clusters. A key point of contrast between verified information and speculative reports is the mode of transmission. Standard hantavirus transmission occurs through the inhalation of aerosols from dried rodent urine, droppings, or saliva. The scientific community remains focused on whether the current Argentine strain exhibits any deviations from this typical pathway. Shipping and travel logistics in the affected agricultural sectors are also under observation, though official statements have not yet implemented broad restrictions. Instead, the focus remains on workplace safety and the sanitation of storage facilities, where rodents are most likely to congregate. Public health officials have emphasized that the risk is highest for those in direct contact with infested areas, such as farmers, hikers, or residents of rural housing. The data provided by local surveillance programs is being cross-referenced with historical outbreak patterns, such as the 2018-2019 event in Apuyen, to determine if the current rat boom follows a predictable ecological cycle. By contrasting the raw data of rodent counts with actual clinical case numbers, agencies aim to provide a sober assessment of the threat level. This core development phase is defined by a race to understand the scale of the rodent eruption before the virus can establish a significant foothold in the human population, utilizing every tool from genomic sequencing in the lab to basic environmental trapping in the field. Prevention and public guidance remain the most effective tools in managing the risk associated with the hantavirus surge in Argentina. Official health statements emphasize that the primary defense against the virus is the systematic reduction of human-rodent contact. This involves specific, high-detail protocols for the cleaning of potentially infested areas. Public health guidance dictates that residents should never sweep or vacuum rodent-affected spaces, as these actions can stir up the very aerosols that carry the virus. Instead, a solution of bleach and water is recommended to soak any droppings or nesting materials before they are carefully removed with gloves. Ventilation of closed buildings, such as sheds or cabins that have been empty for long periods, is also a critical step in prevention. Beyond individual actions, government surveillance continues to track the environmental factors contributing to the rodent boom, such as the masting of certain plant species, which provides an overabundance of food. However, there are clear limits to current scientific knowledge. There is currently no specific vaccine or cure for Hantavirus Pulmonary Syndrome, making early supportive care the only clinical intervention available. The uncertainty regarding the duration of this rodent eruption means that public health alerts may remain in place for several months as the ecological cycle runs its course. Authorities are also monitoring for any signs of human-to-human transmission, which remains a rare but significant concern with the ANDV strain found in this region. This honesty regarding the limits of medical science is a hallmark of the current reporting, shifting the focus from fear to practical, evidence-based mitigation. Surveillance will likely expand into neighbouring regions to ensure that the rodent population spike is not spreading across borders via transit or natural migration. As the situation evolves, the commitment to transparent data sharing between Argentine labs and global health organisations like the World Health Organization will be paramount. The goal is to ensure that localized environmental events do not escalate through a lack of information or delayed response. For now, the focus remains on the ground in Argentina, where the intersection of biology and public health is being tested by a significant natural event. For further updates on global health reporting and infectious disease surveillance, consider following this channel for more detailed analysis. The core developments of the current rodent surge in Argentina are defined by a complex intersection of environmental biology and rigorous epidemiological surveillance. Reports from the ground indicate that the rodent war, or rat boom, is an ecological phenomenon known as a population eruption, frequently driven by natural cycles such as the mass flowering of specific plant species or favourable climatic shifts that increase food availability. As these populations reach a critical mass, health agencies are shifting from passive monitoring to active intervention. The primary agents tasked with the scientific response is the National Administration of Laboratories and Health Institutes, often referred to as the Malbrán Institute, which serves as the central hub for hantavirus research and diagnostic confirmation in South America. In the field, biologists and public health technicians are deploying specialized traps to collect samples from the reservoir species, most notably the long-tailed pygmy rice rat, or Oligorhizomes longicordatus. These samples are crucial for determining the prevalence of the virus within the rodent population, providing a predictive metric for potential human infections. In the laboratory, the diagnostic process is multifaceted, utilizing enzyme-linked immunosorbent assays, or ELISA, to detect specific antibodies, alongside polymerase chain reaction tests to identify the viral RNA itself. This high-level testing is essential because the early clinical presentation of hantavirus can be indistinguishable from common influenza or other endemic diseases such as leptospirosis or dengue fever. Patients typically undergo a prodromal phase lasting several days, characterized by high fever, severe myalgia, and gastrointestinal distress. However, It is the subsequent cardiopulmonary phase that necessitates the emergency protocols currently being reviewed by hospitals in the affected provinces. During this phase, the virus triggers a massive inflammatory response, often described as a cytokine storm, causing the capillaries in the lungs to leak fluid. This leads to non-cardiogenic pulmonary edema, a condition where the lungs fill with fluid, resulting in rapid onset respiratory failure and shock. Clinical data indicates that the mortality rate for Hantavirus Pulmonary Syndrome remains high, often exceeding 30 to 40%, which underscores the urgency of early detection and the deployment of intensive care resources. While the source material suggests the world is on the edge of a new pandemic, virologists draw a sharp distinction between localized surges and a global health crisis. Unlike influenza or coronaviruses, most hantaviruses are not efficiently transmitted between humans. The notable exception, and the reason for heightened international concern, is the Andes virus strain endemic to Argentina and Chile, which has demonstrated a documented capacity for person-to-person transmission in specific cluster events. Consequently, verified information from health authorities focuses on isolating confirmed cases and conducting deep contact tracing to prevent small-scale clusters from expanding into broader communities. This strategy involves monitoring the shipping and logistics sectors in rural and semi-rural areas, where the transport of grain and agricultural products could inadvertently move infected rodents or contaminated materials. By contrasting the sensationalist headlines with the biological constraints of the virus, a clearer picture emerges. The threat is significant and demands immediate action from provincial health ministries. But it is currently a localized ecological crisis rather than an uncontained global event. This core phase of the response is dedicated to the silent period between the rodent surge and the potential peak of human cases, a window of time where surveillance and lab capacity are the primary lines of defense. National health officials are currently prioritizing the distribution of diagnostic kits to regional clinics to ensure that the time between symptom onset and laboratory confirmation is minimized, as early supportive care is the only known factor that significantly improves survival rates in patients with severe respiratory involvement. The management of the hantavirus surge in Argentina and its implications for global public health rests heavily on the rigorous application of preventative measures and the expansion of environmental surveillance. Public health guidance issued by the Ministry of Health emphasizes that the most effective strategy for individual protection is the systematic exclusion of rodents from human dwellings and the safe decontamination of potentially infested environments. Practical takeaways for residents and travellers in affected regions begin with the concept of wet cleaning to prevent the aerosolization of viral particles. Because hantavirus is shed in the urine, saliva and feces of infected rodents, any action that disturbs dried excreta, such as sweeping with a broom or using a vacuum cleaner, can loft the virus into the air where it is easily inhaled. Official protocols dictate that potentially contaminated surfaces must be thoroughly soaked with a disinfectant solution, typically a mixture of 9 parts water to 1 part household bleach, for at least 5 minutes before being wiped down with paper towels or disposable cloths. This chemical deactivation is a critical step, as the lipid envelope of the hantavirus is highly susceptible to common detergents and chlorine-based cleaners. Furthermore, the physical sealing of homes is a primary long-term defense. This involves using specialized materials like steel wool or metal flashing to plug holes larger than a 1/4 inch, as rodents can compress their bodies to enter surprisingly small gaps in search of food or shelter. From a broader surveillance perspective, health authorities are closely monitoring the ecological triggers known as masting events. This biological phenomenon occurs when certain plant species, such as the collyhue bamboo in the Andean Patagonian forest, produce an extraordinary abundance of seeds simultaneously. This massive infusion of high-energy food into the ecosystem bypasses standard predatory checks, allowing rodent populations to multiply exponentially in a very short time frame. By tracking these botanical cycles alongside meteorological data, such as rainfall patterns and temperature shifts, associated with the El Niño Southern Oscillation, epidemiologists can predict peaks in rodent density months in advance. However, Despite these sophisticated tracking methods, there remain significant limits to current scientific knowledge that the public must understand. There is currently no commercially available vaccine for hantavirus in the Americas, nor is there a specific antiviral medication that can effectively kill the virus once a human infection is established. Clinical intervention is limited to aggressive supportive care, which may include the use of extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, or ECMO, to oxygenate the blood outside the body when the lungs fail. This lack of a silver bullet medical solution places the entire burden of safety on prevention and early symptomatic recognition. As we conclude this report, the ethical responsibility of public health reporting becomes clear. It is to provide a calm, evidence-based assessment that avoids the pitfalls of alarmism while acknowledging the genuine risks posed by ecological instability. The rodent war in Argentina serves as a stark reminder of the delicate balance between human expansion and wild ecosystems. While the term pandemic is often used to grab headlines, the reality is a story of community resilience and scientific diligence. Authorities continue to stress that panic is counterproductive. Instead, informed vigilance and adherence to sanitation protocols remain the most potent tools in the public health arsenal. The situation requires a sustained commitment to international data sharing and local infrastructure support to ensure that rural clinics are equipped for the challenges ahead. By understanding the biological mechanisms of transmission and the ecological drivers of rodent booms, we move from a position of fear to one of preparedness. Public health is a collective endeavour, requiring transparency from officials and proactive measures from individuals to safeguard the well-being of the most vulnerable populations in the path of this natural surge. For continued reporting on emerging health trends and global surveillance updates, you may wish to subscribe to our channel.